My name is Mark Haustein. I'm a company called UC1 at Reno. And the topic today is how to bridge this gap that's created by renewables, solar and wind. We've got this huge problem in this area. So what I'd like to point out here is this is, for the optimist, they see a glass that is half full. For the pessimist, they see a glass that's half empty. The engineer's view is that it's twice the size it actually needs to be, right? So we're going to take an engineer's view of the world. We're going to go back to the basics of science and try to look at things in terms of how the world is supposed to operate. So while we've been working through putting solar into the system and wind, we've created this problem of developing renewables. And I'm from Nevada, and one of the, not a leading, not like California, but we're close. Recently, the conversation has been that NV Energy, or the state utility, has to go in and buy $350 million worth of gas turbines for the sole purpose of balancing the grid from solar panels. That's been their problem. And I don't know if you know this, but $350 million in Nevada, that's a lot of money. We only have a population of around 3 million people. So, and we have less ratepayers than actual population. So this is a big cost. And when this all started, I've been in Nevada for 25 years. When we started this, I went to the meetings and I heard the green energy advocates say, we're going to install solar and it's going to get cheaper. How many people have heard that, right? Solar cheaper, right? Actually, that's not the case. Our utility bills in Nevada have gone up substantially since solar. And they're going to continue to go up. Even though 90% of the energy that we consume is from fossil fuels. Most of the plants in Nevada are gas-fired. But they're going to continue to go up. And in cases of California, they've gone up 80% in the last 3 years. So one of the things that's been discussed is the technology just isn't there yet. We just need more solar panels. We need more wind. We need some kind of super software that's going to make all of this work. I don't understand that. From a science standpoint, I haven't figured that one out. But other parts of the world are going through the same thing. There's conversations that in the United Kingdom, their offshore wind farms are actually increasing the price. The highest price of utilities are in the United Kingdom over Europe. So just a couple of facts. In 2022, solar and wind renewable energy sources accounted for 13% in the U.S., with 3% solar, 10% wind, respectively. Despite these small percentages, all our hopes of creating a clean grid are centered on massive adoption of a defective solution. Solar and wind, for all its clean benefits, is not a consistent and reliable energy source. Utilities are constantly fighting the biggest flaw in renewable adoption, and that is the reliability gap. This is the biggest problem going on right now. Utilities are constantly fighting this. And today, whenever solar is being developed, fossil fuel plants are in the ready to step in when wind and solar fail. So yesterday, I think there was a presentation from a gentleman from ARPA, and he was actually talking about the big gas-fired plants in Texas. And he literally said, we can actually see how much wind is in West Texas, right? You see how much wind is in West Texas. You can actually see the load vary, because when there's no wind, they're loaded. And when there's wind, they're offloading. And they're having to balance that load. And they want to get paid for that, obviously. So when we talk about reliable power, there's a definition in the utility industry, and that is 24/7, 365, every second of every day. And solar and wind don't do those. And if you look at most power purchase agreements, they're written in such a way as to give them an out. Anyone else that's bought into a power purchase agreement, I deal with geothermal. If we don't produce on our contract, we basically have to pay that avoidance rate. which can be 10, 12, $120 a megawatt, big numbers. So the idea is that everybody knows this is a problem. Everyone realizes this is a problem. So I'm actually trying to figure out what kinds of storage technologies we can use. Everyone's talking about batteries. Most of the industry has adopted this idea of 4-hour batteries. Again, I can't explain why it is that everyone that goes out for a bid for solar and wants solar plus storage goes 4 hours. Makes no sense. If you've ever been to Las Vegas in the summer months, go outside at 11:30 at night and walk down the street. You'll feel all that radiant heat. That heat doesn't leave for hours on end. 4 hours isn't going to get you past that point. We don't have that built in. No one's actually talking about the other part of this which is in the morning, when those solar panels come back on, you have to model that to say, those solar panels have to recharge those batteries from the day before they can actually become useful energy, creating another big glitch in the system in the early morning hours. So I want to talk about solar thermal as a potential for batteries. Think of it as an earth battery. And before I start that, I have to kind of go back in time. I want to go back to 1820. Does anyone know what happened in 1820? There were a couple of people right around, Carnot and Lord Kelvin. And they were futzing around with steam engines. Anyone? Okay. And at that time, steam engines had an overall efficiency of 3%. But everyone basically took these big boilers and these big fuel piles, and they had a machine that was going to turn that into something useful. So we began to talk about this idea of how efficient could a steam boiler be and how efficient things could become. And we came up with this concept of entropy. If anyone's ever looked at that, the entropy is actually what is a measure of the useful energy that comes from the weed and chaff. Think of this as you throw it all in there, and how much of that energy comes back in a useful form. So the term entropy was brought up. And I'm just going to advance this couple slides here. So at that time, we were looking at that, and we came up with this term of entropy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I brought this up, but I'm going to go back into the future and why. So let's jump to the future and talk about this. The world, the globe right now, has an abundance of solar. If anybody wants to disagree with me, we can talk later. It's to the tune of 173,000, I want to get this right, terawatts, continuous energy. That turns out to be, roughly in math terms, about 10,000 times more energy than the world uses today. 10,000 times more. Continuous source, 173,000 terawatts. So when we look at sustainable energy problems, it's less about a source, if you can agree with me on the source, and more about storage. So today the term entropy describes ordered and disordered systems and separating energy from usable to diffuse. Keep in mind the laws of thermodynamics that all the original energy is still present, but some has been converted into useful work, and some has been transformed into less useful or diffuse. Now looking at the planet, keep in mind entropy, how much of that original solar energy, that 173,000 terawatts continuous energy, is consumed by the planet. So we have 173,000 terawatts of energy coming in all the time. How much of that is consumed? Any answers? What's that?
A microfraction, yeah.
0. So the reason it's 0 is because for millions of years, that amount of energy, minus some, sun flares and things like that, that's the same amount of energy that's been coming in as we've been spending. and it hasn't changed. We don't heat up, and we don't cool down. There are some concepts, and people say, no, wait a minute, Mark. We do consume energy. Well, when you look at concepts like entropy, you draw a box around the globe. What goes in and what comes out. And what I want to point out here is that we get, and this is important, what we get is this concentrated source of energy coming in all the time. And then it's absorbed, it's reflected, clouds, atmosphere, it's reflected, it's filtered, some's absorbed and re-radiated, but it's a constant balance all the time. So this concept of entropy is very important to life because without that concept, we live in that gap between concentrated energy and diffuse energy. Plants have found a way to convert that into mass, which becomes food, becomes life, all of the things around life. If they could not figure out how to take a concentrated form of energy and convert it into something else, we wouldn't have it. We would not have life. So I bring it up, because we basically, all life exists and found a way to thrive in this gap. And the other thing is I'm going to be talking about entropy as it applies to potentially useful energy systems. Our goal will be to focus on developing energy systems around capture and use of ordered concentrated energy in a sustainable manner. And one last thing I want to point out is that all the energy that we use today, minus nuclear and geothermal, everything has been derived from solar. Think about it, everything. So we would be wise to kind of look at solar as this opportunity. So if we were to take a blank sheet of paper and we were all new graduate engineers with brains and all this intelligence about thermodynamics and engineering and science, what would we come up with as a way of solving the renewable energy problem? Well, first thing is we realize that we've got a source that's 10,000 times bigger than what we need. It's available in every location. Solar thermal is 2.5 times more available energy as compared to solar PV. One of the things that's going on right now is NextEra has been buying up, prior to solar PVs being very competitive in price, it used to be solar thermal. It used to be collectors. Heat would spin a turbine, generate power. So there's these solar thermal power plants all over the Southwest, California, Arizona. And so NextEra bought them up and said, great, we're gonna decommission those. We're gonna throw those in a landfill, and we're gonna put solar PV in their place. What did they find out immediately? This little fact right here. Solar thermal is about 80% efficient, and PV panels are roughly 20% efficient. So for the same amount of capacity, it takes 2.5 times the same amount of area. That might be important if you're trying to figure out where you're going to put power and how you're going to set it up. One of the concepts that we want to think about is maybe we don't need 500 megawatt plants in the middle of nowhere, away from everybody that wants to be there. Maybe we should be looking at small scale solutions, microgrids, something closer to the point of use, something that's there all the time. It's like having a battery right in your neighborhood. So we could do 5 megawatts in 40 acres. Smaller scaled solar. That would be a nice concept in this whole idea. So then the other part of it is, well, the benefits are we get carbon-free, no reliance on fossil fuels. Lower temperatures mean a greater capacity and lower enthalpy reversal. And what I'm going to explain there is that if you do a process at a really high temperature, within the concepts of thermodynamics and entropy, it's not reversible. If you do it in a controlled way and you can get everything back, and anybody who's studied some of the things around compressed air is another great storage medium. It just doesn't scale very well. This can scale if we could use fluid, something in the ground. But the idea is to make it reversible and make it more efficient and sustainable. So we're going to think about this. In my mind, I think about this and I go, I want to run lower temperatures. Most geothermal plants are running 380 C and up. There's a triangle that shows where you can find geothermal on the planet. And the top of that pyramid is where all of the unicorns are. Everybody's trying to get up there. Everyone wants to, I mean, they huddle at the geysers and they huddle in places on the planet where it's readily available. But then you have to get power lines. You have to get all that stuff out to other people. And you have to figure out how to make that all reliable. And you have to make that, you have to democratize that. There's a whole social concept of this that we're not even talking about. But you have to democratize that. And as an engineer, I know there's people thinking about that, but you get the idea. But the idea is to be able to run it at lower temperatures, so you're taking advantage of this bottom curve. There are more places on the planet where you could actually find natural heat at a lower temperature and be able to do almost conventional. The industry is not looking at that. I can tell you right now, nobody's looking at that. And this idea of what we're working on right now in Nevada is what I kind of want to share with you. So, let's see if I can go forward here. So, I got geologists and engineers and regulatory people and attorneys. And our idea was, what if there was a way to store solar heat, create electricity without carbon emissions from a renewable geothermal source? So think of this like you drive by it, it's a geothermal plant. It's a really small footprint. Maybe a 20 or 30 megawatt plant is going to take up 10 acres. No big emissions, no smokestacks. Got the idea? And what if it could be deployed using the existing resources and infrastructure? And what if it could fill the reliability gap? Because now we can use 24/7. We're going to take solar heat during the day, inject it into the ground, and create a solar thermal battery. So this is what we're working on in Nevada. We've got 3,500 acres in a place called Salt Wells, Nevada, and we've been working on testing. And so basically the secret sauce of the whole concept is this idea of being able to inject heat into the ground. And if you think from an engineering science way, if you have a 5 megawatt plant, you need 15 megawatts of solar collection. Because you only have 8 hours to collect your solar. So think of this in an electronics term, this is like a capacitor. We can charge it and then discharge it over time. And that's the modeling part of it. This is a way of creating power 24/7 at any scale using pretty much solar collectors are pretty much standard technology. The heat power is pretty much standard technology, and be able to develop it. So that's what we're working on now, and I'm hoping this will incite some interest in this kind of a concept being used. Are there any questions? Salt Wells, Nevada. So where we are, we're just east of the Fallon Naval Air Station in northern Nevada.
We're down in Las Vegas. We went to do field trips to fun stuff like that.
You're more than welcome to come up.
That's a little far from us.
We've got a 12-inch pipeline, runs a mile, and we've been injecting into the wells, doing what we call fluorescein or tracer tests to be able to model what's going on in the resource. We're looking for an area. If you were to think about where solar exists in the United States, it's all in the Southwest. That also happens to be where a majority of these, what we call sedimentary basins are, from Nevada all the way around to West Texas. And we're looking at places like the Four Corners, shallow water aquifers with water that's not necessarily the best for potable use, but it's a great storage medium for what we want to do. And this can scale. We've got some pricing and stuff, and we've been looking for some funding on this, but we're interested in anyone that's wanting to spend some time and think about this. Anything else? Anything from the government? We got government people here? All right.